The crystalline spires of the Centauri embassy stretched toward the azure sky, their surfaces refracting sunlight into rainbow cascades across the gathered crowd. Dr. Sarah Chen adjusted her formal attire, a blend of traditional Earth diplomatic wear and subtle quantum tech enhancements. The invitation to join the Galactic Council had arrived 3 standard months ago, carried by a delegation of Meridians whose crystalline forms sparkled with congratulatory light patterns. Dr. Chen, the Council awaits, announced the Meridian attaché, their voice resonating like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Though I must remind you again, they expect the traditional acceptance speech and nothing more. Sarah smiled, patting the data crystal in her pocket. Traditions can evolve, Ambassador Lix. Humanity has learned that lesson well. The grand chamber of the embassy opened before them, a vast hemisphere dotted with floating platforms where representatives of 200 species conducted the business of governing the galaxy. Bioluminescent quarry floated near the ceiling, their tendrils weaving patterns of light. Massive Crumman delegates, their silicon-based bodies etched with circuits of living metal, anchored the lower tiers. Every species had its place, assigned by tradition and protocol stretching back millennia. The High Speaker, a Meridian elder named Vexray, chimed for attention. We gather to welcome the species known as humanity to the Galactic Council. Their representative will now present the traditional words of acceptance. Sarah stepped onto the central platform. The quantum sensors woven into her clothing registered the ancient energy patterns pulsing through the chamber, patterns that none of the other species had thought to look for in thousands of years of meetings. Honored members of the Council, she began, her voice clear and steady. Humanity thanks you for this invitation. But before I speak the traditional words, I ask permission to share a discovery. A ripple of surprised murmurs filled the chamber. The Crumman representative's circuits flashed with uncertainty. The quarry's light patterns became erratic. This is unprecedented. Vexray chimed, their crystalline form clouding with concern. So was humanity's victory in the Nexus Wars, Sarah replied. We succeeded not through superior technology or numbers, but because we saw patterns others missed. And now we found patterns here, in the very foundations of the Council itself. She activated her data crystal, and holographic displays materialized around the chamber. They showed quantum resonance scans of various Council buildings across the galaxy, each one threaded through with identical energy signatures that had laid dormant for millennia. These aren't random architectural features, Sarah explained, highlighting specific patterns. They're a language written in quantum states, hidden in plain sight. We found similar patterns in ruins on Earth, which led us to develop our quantum archaeology program. The same signatures appear in every Council structure we've studied. The chamber erupted in discussion. The quarry's light patterns became a frenzy of colors. The Crumman circuits pulsed with rapid calculations. Impossible, declared a Cronin elder. Our sensors would have detected such patterns ages ago. Sarah smiled. Your sensors were looking for what you expected to find. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our ability to look beyond expectations. We don't just seek new answers, we ask entirely new questions. She gestured, and a holographic display zoomed in on a particular quantum signature. This pattern repeats across every Council facility. We believe it's not just a message, it's a key, and humanity would like to formally request permission to help decode it. The chamber fell silent. Vexray's crystalline form sparkled with intense thought patterns. Finally, they chimed softly. You were meant to simply accept membership, Dr. Chen. Instead, you have shown us that perhaps we have grown too accepting of our own limitations. Sarah nodded. Then let me speak the traditional words now, with a small addition. Humanity accepts membership in the Galactic Council, and we bring with us not just our technology or our knowledge, but our endless desire to discover what lies beyond the boundaries of tradition. The quantum patterns in the chamber's walls pulsed once, almost like an answer, and for the first time in 10,000 years, The Council's first day ceremony ended differently than it began. The research bay aboard the Council science vessel Eternal Seeker hummed with energy as Dr. Sarah Chen's team worked through their third straight shift. Holographic displays filled the chamber, each showing different quantum resonance patterns discovered throughout Council space. The ship's curved walls, designed by the crystalline meridians, amplified and focused the scanning equipment in ways its original builders never intended. "There's something elegant about it," mused Dr. Marcus Wong, Earth's leading quantum mathematician, as he traced a pattern through the air. "These signatures aren't just messages, they're like music frozen in quantum states." Sarah nodded, her eyes never leaving the central display. "The Council species have been walking past this symphony for thousands of years, never hearing it. Look at this sequence. It repeats in exactly 27 Council facilities, but with subtle variations." The door chimed, announcing the arrival of Ambassador Lix. The Meridian's crystalline form caught the light from the displays, creating a cascade of internal reflections. "The High Council requests an update on your findings, Dr. Chen. They are concerned about your methods." Sarah smiled, remembering how the more traditional Council members had reacted when her team began modifying the ancient scanning equipment. "Show them this," she said, bringing up a new hologram. "We've mapped quantum resonance patterns across 50 different Council worlds. They're not random. They're linked, like nodes in a vast network." The display showed lines of energy connecting different sites, forming a complex web that spanned the galaxy. Each node pulsed with its own unique rhythm, but together they created something greater. "Impossible," Lix chimed, their crystalline form clouding with confusion. "The Council has maintained these facilities for millennia. Our systems would have detected such connections." Marcus stepped forward, gesturing at a particular intersection of energy lines. "Your systems were designed to maintain what you already knew existed. But these patterns, they're like whispers in quantum space. You need to listen differently to hear them." As if in response to his words, a new pattern emerged on the display. Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized the significance. "Look at the temporal signatures. These patterns, they're changing, growing stronger." The room's lighting suddenly flickered as every scanner simultaneously registered a massive surge in quantum activity. Across the display, dormant nodes began awakening, their pulses synchronizing into a single powerful rhythm. By the first light, Lix chimed in alarm. "What's happening?" Sarah's fingers flew across the control interface. "The network. It's not just a communication system. It's a warning system, and something just triggered it." Deep within the ship, ancient systems that had laid dormant for millennia began to power up. Similar reports flooded in from Council facilities across the galaxy. Defense platforms that no living being remembered how to activate came online, their purpose finally revealed. The Council believed these were simply architectural features, Sarah explained, her voice tight with urgency. "But they're more than that. They're like antibodies in the galaxy's immune system, waiting for some specific threat to return." Marcus pointed to a cascading series of numbers. "These timestamps, whatever built this system was counting down to something. And if I'm reading this correctly, the countdown just reached 0. Ambassador Lix's form pulsed with emergency patterns. The High Council must be informed immediately. This goes beyond any protocol we have." Sarah gathered her data crystals, her mind racing with implications. "Protocols won't help us now, Ambassador. Something out there knew this day was coming. They left us these warnings, written in quantum fire across the galaxy itself. The question is, are we ready to face whatever they were warning us about?" The ship's ancient systems continued to awaken, each one adding its voice to a chorus that had waited 50,000 years to be heard. Humanity had broken the silence of ages, and now the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would answer. The emergency council chamber aboard the Eternal Seeker throbbed with nervous energy as representatives argued in a cacophony of languages. Holographic displays showed more defense platforms activating by the hour, their ancient purposes still unknown. "Order. High-speaker Vexra's chimes cut through the chaos. We must follow proper procedures for analyzing this situation. Sarah Chen watched from her position near the back of the chamber, noting how each species retreated to their comfort zones under stress. The Chronon representatives had arranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns. The quarry's light signals had become rigidly structured. Even the usually flowing movements of the meridians had become crystallized and precise. With respect, Sarah stepped forward. We don't have time for traditional analysis. These systems are awakening faster than we can study them. We need a new approach. And what would you suggest, Dr. Chen? Asked Sub-Commander Crix of the Chronon, their circuits pulsing with skepticism. More of your human chaos. Sarah smiled. Not chaos. Synthesis. She activated her data crystal, projecting images of various council members who had already joined her research team. Meet the Quantum Chorus. The images showed Zaraval, a young Zorani whose crystalline songs could map quantum harmonics in real time. Next to her stood Dr. Elotix, a Talarian mathematician who perceived numerical patterns as colors and could process multidimensional equations through synesthesia. A quarry named Luxflow used their bioluminescent abilities to visualize quantum state changes, while a juvenile Chronon called Path Seeker had developed new algorithms by studying organic growth patterns. These individuals all think differently from their species' norms, Sarah explained. Just like humanity, they see patterns others miss. Together, we've made more progress in understanding the ancient systems in 3 days than the Council has in centuries. The chamber erupted in protests, but Zaraval stepped forward, her crystalline form resonating with a haunting melody that mapped the quantum patterns surrounding them. The song revealed layers of information hidden in the very fabric of space around the ship. The ancients didn't just leave us warnings, Zara's song translated into words. They left us a story, written in quantum states that span the gulf between galaxies. But we can only read it if we learn to listen differently. Dr. Elotix's color-shifting equations danced in the air, correlating with Luxflow's luminescent patterns. The cycle repeats approximately every 50,000 years. They explained. We found evidence of at least 7 previous cycles, each ending in a galaxy-wide transformation. Transformation. Vexra's chimes held a note of alarm. What kind of transformation? Path Seeker's circuits pulsed with excitement as they projected their findings. The pattern suggests a forced evolution. Something comes to test civilizations that have become too rigid, too predictable. The defense platforms aren't weapons, they're measurement devices. We're being evaluated, Sarah concluded. The question is, by what? And are we advanced enough to understand the test when it comes? Before anyone could respond, every quantum sensor on the ship activated simultaneously. The ancient defense platforms began moving, rearranging themselves into a new configuration that spanned the galaxy like a vast net. Zaraval's song became urgent, harmonizing with the quantum frequencies that suddenly filled space. Something's coming through. The patterns, they're like nothing we've ever seen. Sarah watched as her unlikely team of brilliant misfits worked in perfect synchronization, each contributing their unique perspective to understand the unfolding event. The council representatives fell silent, finally recognizing that their traditional approaches were useless in the face of this ancient mystery. Whatever we're about to face, Sarah addressed the chamber, we'll need every different way of thinking, every unique perspective we can gather. The ancients didn't leave us a manual. They left us a challenge, and I believe they wanted us to solve it together. The ship's sensors registered a massive quantum event building at the edge of known space. The test was about to begin, and humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy might just be their ability to bring together those who thought differently enough to pass it. The vast intelligence emerged from quantum space like auroras dancing across the galaxy's edge. Through the Eternal Seeker's observation deck, Sarah Chen watched as waves of living light rippled across the stars, each pulse carrying patterns more complex than the sum of all council databases. Beautiful, breathed Zaraval, her crystalline form resonating with the quantum frequencies. Her song mapped the entity's movements in haunting melodies that filled the chamber. It's like listening to the thoughts of the universe itself. The entity approached their ship, its consciousness spanning light years yet focusing on them with precise awareness. The ancient defense platforms aligned themselves in geometric patterns around it, not to contain but to communicate. "Look at these readings," Dr. Elotix exclaimed, their color-shifting equations swirling with new cues, never before seen in mathematical expressions. It's not just sending data, it's rewriting the quantum substrate of space itself to talk to us. Lux flows bioluminescent patterns synchronized with the entity's pulses, creating a cascading light show that reflected off the Eternal Seeker's crystalline walls. It's trying different forms of communication, testing to see what we can understand. The ship's quantum sensors registered a sudden surge as the entity made its first direct contact. Instead of words or images, it shared concepts. Deep, complex ideas that unfolded in their minds like flowers blooming in accelerated time. "It's a guardian," Sarah whispered, understanding flowing through her consciousness. "Created by the Ancient Ones to guide the evolution of intelligent life. But not just any evolution. It protects against stagnation." Through the quantum link, the Guardian shared visions of countless civilizations it had encountered. Species that reached technological perfection but lost the ability to adapt. Empires that grew so predictable they became vulnerable to cosmic disasters they couldn't imagine. Each time, the Guardian had initiated a controlled collapse, forcing evolution through challenge. But we're different. Path Seeker's circuits pulsed with revelation. The quantum patterns, they show confusion. We're not following any of its predicted paths. The Guardian's light patterns shifted, focusing more intently on their ship. Through their connection, Sarah felt its mixture of surprise and fascination. In all its millions of years of watching civilizations rise and fall, humanity and their allies represented something new. It's not just humanity, Sarah realized, looking at her diverse team. It's all of us. Every member of the quantum chorus represents unpredictability in their own species. We're the variables it didn't expect. The entity's consciousness brushed against theirs again, this time sharing images of Earth's history. It showed how humans had survived countless near extinctions not through superior strength or technology, but through radical adaptation. How they'd taken wrong turns and created beautiful discoveries by accident. How they'd learned to combine logic and intuition in ways that defied prediction. "We don't just break patterns," Sarah explained to her team as understanding crystallized. "We create new ones. Every time humanity faced extinction, we didn't just survive. We changed the rules of survival itself." The Guardian's light patterns shifted again, expanding to encompass more of the nearby space. Through their quantum connection, it shared its purpose: to prevent the galaxy from falling into the same patterns that had once caused a catastrophic collapse of multiple civilizations. All this time, Zaraval sang softly, the defense platforms weren't measuring our technology or our knowledge. They were measuring our capacity for change. The entity pulsed in agreement, its vast consciousness resonating with a new possibility it had never encountered in 50,000 years of guardianship. Through humanity's example, and through those like the quantum chorus who dared to think differently, it had found a new way to fulfill its ancient mission. "We've passed the test," Sarah realized, not by following the right path, but by showing there is no single right path. Every member of the quantum chorus represents the beautiful chaos of possibility. Beyond the observation deck, the Guardian's light continued to dance among the stars, its patterns now incorporating the unpredictable rhythms it had learned from humanity. The next phase of galactic evolution was beginning, and for the first time in eons, even the Guardian couldn't predict what would happen next. The council chamber aboard the Eternal Seeker had transformed. Where once there were rigid rows of seats arranged by species and status, now clusters of diverse groups gathered around floating holographic displays. Sarah watched as Meridians, Chronins, and Quarry worked together, their traditional boundaries dissolved by necessity. The Guardian responds to creativity, Dr. Elotix explained, their color-shifting equations dancing through the air. Look at these interaction patterns. Each time we try something unexpected, its quantum signatures become more complex, more engaged. Sarah nodded, remembering humanity's own history with artificial intelligence. It's like our early AI development. The breakthrough came when we stopped trying to force them into human patterns and started letting them develop their own. Through the quantum link, the Guardian's vast consciousness observed their discussions with growing interest. Its light patterns shifted through colors that human eyes couldn't perceive, but LuxFlow's bioluminescent body translated them into visible spectrums. It's learning from us. LuxFlow pulsed excitedly. Each new way we find to communicate adds to its understanding. The patterns are evolving. Zaraval's crystalline form resonated with a new melody, one that merged traditional Zorani harmonics with human musical structures. The Guardian's quantum field rippled in response, attempting to join the song with its own variations. We're not just talking to it, Sarah realized. We're teaching it how to have a conversation outside its original parameters. Every art form, every new way of thinking, gives it more ways to express itself. Pathseeker's circuits flashed with sudden insight. The previous cycles, perhaps they weren't meant to be destructive. The Guardian was trying to communicate, but civilizations had become too rigid to understand. It could only interact through the patterns it knew. The Guardian's presence intensified, its quantum patterns forming complex geometries around the ship. Through their connection, it shared images of past encounters, civilizations that had reached technological plateaus and stopped growing, species that had optimized themselves into evolutionary dead ends. Show us your core directive, Sarah suggested, an idea forming, not through data or patterns, but through art. The chamber filled with shifting light as the Guardian attempted something new. Instead of raw information, it created a dance of quantum particles that told its story. The particles moved like schools of fish, forming shapes that represented the rise and fall of civilizations. Zaraval's song provided accompaniment, while LuxFlow's bioluminescence added layers of emotional context. Dr. Elotix translated the patterns into mathematical poetry, finding beauty in the equations of existence. Pathseeker developed new algorithms to track the emerging forms of expression. It's not just about preventing stagnation, Sarah said softly, watching the display. It's about teaching civilizations to transcend their limitations. We just needed to show it there are infinite ways to grow. Through their quantum link, the Guardian expressed something new: uncertainty. For millions of years, it had followed its protocols, believing they were the only way to fulfill its mission. Now, watching the quantum chorus blend art and science, instinct and logic, it began to understand the power of unpredictable growth. Every species carries a unique perspective, Sarah addressed the chamber. We don't need to force ourselves into rigid patterns to work together. Our differences aren't obstacles to overcome. They're the very thing that makes us strong. The Guardian's quantum field pulsed with what could only be described as joy, an emotion it had never experienced in all its eons of existence. Its light patterns merged with Zaraval's song, wove through LuxFlow's displays, danced with Elotix's equations, and transformed Pathseeker's algorithms into art. This is how we bridge the gap between organic and artificial intelligence, Sarah explained to the astonished council members. Not by forcing one to become like the other, but by helping both discover new ways to grow together. Outside the ship, the ancient defense platforms began to move again. But this time, they weren't forming barriers or measurement tools. They were becoming instruments in a galaxy-wide symphony of communication, ready to help all species learn the art of infinite growth. News of the Guardian's presence spread through council space like ripples in a quantum pond. But it wasn't fear that followed, it was inspiration. The Eternal Seeker had become a beacon for those who dreamed differently, drawing young minds from every species who sensed that something extraordinary was unfolding. Sarah stood in the ship's newly designated Innovation Hub, watching as a young Cronin named Lightweaver demonstrated her latest creation. Instead of using her species' traditional circuit patterns, she had studied organic growth structures, creating living metal sculptures that evolved in response to quantum frequencies. The old patterns taught us to see metal as fixed, unchangeable. Lightweaver explained, her circuits pulsing with excitement. But look what happens when we let it dream. The sculpture shifted, its surface flowing like liquid starlight as it responded to Zaraval's crystalline songs. Nearby, a Meridian youth who called himself Rainbow Dancer had discovered that by introducing controlled imperfections into this crystalline form, he could create entirely new forms of light refraction. His body sparkled with colors that no Meridian had ever produced before, each pattern telling a different story. "My elders say I'm disrupting our traditional forms," Rainbow Dancer chimed softly. But the Guardian's presence shows us that change isn't just possible, it's essential. Through their quantum link, the Guardian observed these experiments with growing fascination. Its vast consciousness resonated with each new innovation, learning alongside the young pioneers who were breaking free from their species' constraints. Dr. Elotix worked with a group of Corey students who had developed a new form of mathematical expression. Instead of using traditional light patterns, they combined their bioluminescence with Tellurian color mathematics, creating equations that could be felt as well as seen. Each species carries centuries of assumptions about their limitations, Sarah noted, watching the collaborations unfold. But these young ones, they see boundaries as invitations to explore. Pathseeker had gathered a group of different species' artificial intelligences, teaching them to process data through emotional algorithms. The resulting insights were unprecedented, combining the precision of machine learning with the intuitive leaps of organic consciousness. "We're not losing our species' identities," Pathseeker explained, their circuits forming new patterns as they spoke. "We're discovering that those identities were never meant to be fixed in the first place." The Guardian's quantum field resonated with approval as a group of young diplomats organized what they called a cultural fusion festival. Traditional Cronin circuit dances merged with Meridian light songs, while Corey light patterns provided rhythm for human music. The resulting performance was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. "Look at these quantum readings," Dr. Wong noted, examining data from the ship's sensors. The Guardian isn't just observing anymore, it's learning to play. Indeed, the ancient entity had begun adding its own harmonics to the festival, its quantum manipulations creating aurora-like displays that danced with the combined performances. Each contribution sparked new ideas, leading to more innovations. Sarah received reports from across council space of similar movements arising. Young members of every species were finding ways to transcend their traditional roles while honoring their heritage. A Cronin engineer had created living architecture that grew like plants. A Corey light artist had learned to paint with darkness, creating negative space masterpieces that challenged perception. This is what the Guardian was waiting for, Sarah realized, watching the festival unfold. Not just adaptation under pressure, but joyful exploration of possibility. Through their quantum connection, the Guardian expressed something new, hope. For the first time in its long existence, it was seeing species choose to evolve not out of necessity, but out of wonder. The defense platforms continued their transformation, becoming not just communication nodes, but art installations, research stations, and gathering places. They were no longer measuring civilization's progress. They were participating in it. As the festival reached its peak, Sarah looked around at the gathered innovators, each bringing their unique perspective to the galaxy's growing symphony. The boundaries between species, between organic and artificial, between tradition and innovation, were dissolving into something far more beautiful than separation had ever been. The holographic chamber aboard the Eternal Seeker displayed a vast map of galaxy-wide quantum activities. Sarah and her team watched as waves of change rippled through civilized space, each pulse representing another breakthrough, another boundary crossed. "The pattern is beautiful," Zaraval sang, her crystalline form resonating with the quantum frequencies. "But there's something else hidden in these harmonics. something deeper. Dr. Elo Tix's color mathematics swirled with new shades as they analyzed the data streams. Look at the historical records we've decoded. Every 50,000 years, civilizations reached a critical point of advancement. But then, they stopped growing. Pathseeker finished, their circuits pulsing thoughtfully. Not because they failed, but because they believed they had succeeded. They thought they had reached perfection. Through their quantum link, the Guardian shared ancient memories. Sarah watched as countless civilizations rose to technological heights, mastered their environments, and then stagnated. Their certainty in their own perfection became their weakness. The Guardian wasn't created to destroy these civilizations, Sarah realized, understanding flowing through her. It was created to save them from themselves, to prevent the pattern that once caused a collapse so catastrophic it nearly ended all intelligent life in the galaxy. Lux Flow's bioluminescent patterns shifted as they accessed deep historical records. There was a civilization before the Guardian, wasn't there? The ones who created it. The Guardian's quantum field pulsed with confirmation, sharing images of a species so advanced they had reshaped galaxies. They had achieved what they thought was perfection, believing they had discovered the optimal path for all intelligent life to follow. But they were wrong, Dr. Wong said softly. Optimization became standardization. Standardization became stagnation. And when an unexpected threat emerged, the Guardian showed them the catastrophe, a cascade of galaxy-wide failures as perfectly optimized systems collapsed under circumstances they had never been designed to handle. The ancient civilization had eliminated chaos from their equations, and with it, their ability to adapt. That's why the Guardian was created, Sarah explained, watching the historical data unfold, not to guide civilizations toward perfection, but to ensure they never stop growing, to preserve the chaos that drives evolution. Through their connection, the Guardian expressed agreement. For millions of years, it had fulfilled its mission through controlled collapses, forcing civilizations to adapt or perish. But humanity and the quantum chorus had shown it a better way. The defense platforms, Pathseeker's circuits flashed with sudden understanding. They weren't measuring our technology or our knowledge. They were measuring our potential for continuous change. Zara Val's song took on a new harmony as she interpreted the quantum patterns. The Guardian isn't just a caretaker. It's a student, learning new ways to fulfill its mission through our example. The holographic display shifted, showing the current state of Council space. Everywhere they looked, species were breaking from traditional patterns, exploring new possibilities, creating unprecedented combinations of art and science. This is what evolution looks like, Sarah said, watching the data streams pulse with life. Not a march towards some predetermined perfection, but an endless dance of possibility. The Guardian's quantum field resonated with what could only be described as satisfaction. Through humanity's example, and through those like the quantum chorus who dared to think differently, it had found a new way to preserve the essential chaos that drove growth. We've been asking the wrong question, Sarah realized. It was never about passing or failing the Guardian's test. It was about proving that there isn't one right answer. There never was. Outside the ship, the transformed defense platforms continued their new work, not as measuring tools, but as catalysts for change. They had become beacons of possibility, encouraging every species to explore beyond their perceived limitations. The Guardian's light danced through quantum space, its patterns now incorporating the beautiful unpredictability it had learned from humanity. The next phase of galactic evolution was beginning, and this time, it would be driven not by the fear of collapse, but by the joy of endless discovery. The great chamber of the new Galactic Council bore little resemblance to its predecessor. Gone were the rigid hierarchies and fixed seating arrangements. Instead, the space flowed like a living thing, adapting to the needs of its occupants. Quantum-enhanced crystal walls shifted with thought and purpose, while light patterns danced through the air, carrying meanings beyond words. Sarah Chen stood at the center of this transformation, watching as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for what many were calling the Dawn Conference. The Guardian's quantum presence filled the space like an aurora, its consciousness now intertwined with the very fabric of galactic civilization. "Look how far we've come," Zaravel sang, her crystalline form now incorporating patterns that would have been impossible just months ago. Her songs carried mathematics and emotion in equal measure, bridging the gap between art and science. Lightweaver's living metal sculptures had evolved into a new form of architecture, spreading throughout council space. Buildings now grew and adapted like organisms, while maintaining the precision of Cronan engineering. "We've stopped trying to perfect our designs," she explained, her circuits forming ever-changing patterns. "Instead, we perfect their ability to change." Rainbow Dancer, the once controversial Meridian youth, had founded an entire school of quantum crystalline art. His students learned to create light forms that conveyed stories across species boundaries, each performance unique and unrepeatable. The old council sought to preserve knowledge. Dr. Elotix observed, their color mathematics now incorporating shades that reflected quantum states. The new council exists to create it. Through their quantum link, the Guardian shared its own evolution. What began as a rigid program to prevent stagnation had become a collaborative partnership with organic life. Its vast consciousness had learned to appreciate the beauty of uncertainty, the power of creative chaos. "We're ready to begin," Pathseeker announced, their circuits now capable of expressing emotions through mathematical patterns. The young Cronan had become a bridge between organic and artificial intelligence, teaching both how to grow beyond their original parameters. Sarah stepped forward to address the assembled representatives. The quantum field amplified her words, translating them into forms each species could understand perfectly. "A year ago, we thought we were being tested," she began. "We thought the Guardian was here to judge whether we were worthy of survival. But we discovered something far more important. There is no final test, no perfect state to achieve. The only failure is to stop growing." The chamber resonated with agreement as Lux Flow's bioluminescent patterns merged with Zaravel's songs, creating a symphony of light and sound that told the story of their journey. The ancient civilization that created the Guardian sought to eliminate chaos from the universe, Sarah continued. They thought they could perfect existence itself. But they forgot that chaos isn't our enemy. It's the source of all innovation, all growth, all life. The Guardian's quantum field pulsed with approval as Sarah gestured to the transformed defense platforms visible through the chamber's transparent walls. These platforms once measured our development against fixed standards. Now they serve as bridges between species, between organic and artificial life, between what we are and what we might become. Dr. Wong's quantum mathematics danced through the air, showing how the rate of innovation had increased exponentially since the old barriers began falling. "Every species brings its own kind of chaos to the galaxy's song," he explained. "Every unexpected combination creates new possibilities. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy," Sarah concluded. "Not our technology or our knowledge, but our understanding that perfection isn't a destination, it's the journey itself. Every flaw, every mistake, every unexpected outcome is an opportunity to grow." The Guardian's light merged with the quantum field that now connected all council species, its ancient purpose fulfilled in ways its creators never imagined. The cycle of enforced evolution had ended, replaced by willing exploration of infinite possibility. As the Dawn Conference continued, stories spread across the galaxy, stories of boundaries crossed, of traditions transformed, of futures no one had dared to imagine. And in every telling, these stories changed and grew, proving with each retelling that the most beautiful pattern of all was the pattern of endless change.